24 by 18 puzzle size. 24 by 24, that should fit. So when I started this channel, I knew I would be competing in a sea of automotive content. And you can see that just by opening up YouTube and looking at the number of garages that show up on your homepage when your home feed when you open up YouTube. So when I started this, I knew it was going to be a slog getting recognized in that sea of automotive content. Now, so I wanted to do something just enough different so that I focused or concentrated more on a community of people who were either like-minded or really interested. So, I mean, right, we're focusing mainly on the Jeeps, the CJ2, the MB, the CJ5. But I knew that there wasn't enough work to do on those Jeeps to sustain an entire channel. Now, the CJ5 may be an exception because we're literally trying to put that thing back together, restore it, rebuild it, make modifications, which is okay. So we can sustain at least some series of videos that way. But I was also very much interested in talking about culture, the automotive culture, talk about the reasons why people get involved with cars. What is it about cars or Jeeps that really get inside your soul and give you an emotional connection to these things that a TV may not, you know? So that was sort of the roots, the beginning of the channel. I wanted to combine all of that in a way that told personal stories, that looked at culture from the past and try to relate it to the great American experiment, the great American culture as it morphs and becomes whatever it becomes. So a couple things prompted this video today. The first thing that prompted it was I was over in Hobby Lobby a couple weeks ago and I found this puzzle. Now, puzzles are fun to do. This video truly isn't about puzzles. But what interested me the most was that Hobby Lobby had these series of puzzles called American Nostalgia, and this one is Rose Art, and it's from they've been in existence since 1923. But it was the photograph that really got me. You know, there were several of these from old trucks and farms and a couple different hot rod style videos, but it was the hot rod video that really sort of fit right into the purpose of the channel, and it got me to thinking about what automotive culture was 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and I wonder if how much it's changed. And the other thing that got me thinking about doing this video was Jaguar's latest commercial, and it clearly evokes something totally different than this nostalgia or this culture or this emotional connection that I have to the automotive culture and from my past. This is not a commentary on Jaguar's new ad, but it certainly speaks differently to some of the advertisements that I grew up with, 69, 70. So I'm not sure I understand Jaguar's ad. I'm not sure what kind of emotion it's trying to evoke, what kind of sense of connection it's trying to evoke, how it feels it's going to get into the souls of its potential buyers. But anyway, so here's my puzzle. 500 pieces. And those 500 pieces sort of represent the automotive culture in general, because there are that many different emotions and feelings and people who have their own sense of what their connection is to the automobile and the car or the culture. I like this, all these in the box that are already put together. That's going to make this easier. Anyway, I liked the feeling that I got from this, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to build a puzzle, or I'm going to just start building a puzzle with you guys here. But I also wanted to speak to the way cars were advertised back in the late 60s, early 70s, and the emotions, the innuendos that it would suggest to you. This is from February of 1973. And this is a advertisement for a Dodge Challenger. And it says, wanted, men who can handle a real road machine. So it was advertised, it was definitely intended for a younger male audience. And today, this younger male audience is part of the baby boom generation, which is me. This is the kind of ads that we were given back in our late teens, late teens, you know. And this is Hot Rod Magazine, by the way, guys. And it grew an emotion. It grew a connection to the cars, especially to muscle cars that were powerful, which I think men tended to be back in the day. Perhaps men tended to be or wanted to be powerful. They wanted to be faster than other men, and I just thought it was interesting that they're looking for men who can handle a real road machine. And it is a beautiful artistic advertisement from the canyons somewhere. It not only evoked power that young men could relate to, but it did it through the canyons, through the rock wall canyons, much like the old West, the Wild West. And in fact, on the back is an old school Marlboro commercial. So when I look at my analytics and I look at my demographics, most of the viewers for my channel are 55 to dead. It's an older group of people. And I've come to understand that there is a relationship, that people can relate to some of the things that I say or that I do. And when I say I don't know how to do something, it's amazing to me how many of you contribute, which again tells me there's a deep connection to all of this. But it seems that there's a deeper connection to an older group of folks. And I'm not saying that younger folks aren't getting involved. They are. I know this. The JDM modification market is just really hot right now, and it's good to see younger folks getting involved. And it warms my heart. It warms my soul. But there are things that this older guy just can't fathom, can't relate or wrap his brain around, and certainly this Jaguar ad is not one that I can relate to or understand. This is This is February of '69, so we're going back just a little bit earlier. And if you're old enough, and if you've been around the car culture long enough, one of my favorite ad sequences or ad campaigns from back in the day was Dr. Oldsmobile. And it was sort of the mad scientist that was creating a machine. So it says in the advertisement, it says, Dr. Oldsmobile builds all his iron with tender loving care. But when he gets to his W machines, the 442, the Cutlass S, or the F85, all with forced air induction, he becomes downright fanatical. It was a car that dressed out at 325 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque, power. And it was designed to evoke an emotion that would draw you in and make you want to own one of these cars. The last one I wanted to show you was the Mercury Cyclone CJ. What do you want on your Red Hot? Again, sort of that in your face, that power objective that if you're going to buy this car, you're going to perform. High performance fastback with a bold build and sports car spirit. Yeah. In the go department, a real grabber, 335 horses. You can have it straight a CJ with a 428 or an additional CJ 428 Ram, the breath taker. I love this stuff. I love these advertisements. And none of it includes people walking around in brightly colored clothing. Just doesn't make sense to me. So my first car was a 1966 Ford Mustang, yellow. Just like this one, just like this model. When I painted this all these years ago, I painted it the wrong yellow. It's a much more pale yellow, but it was still a 66 convertible Mustang. Had a straight six, 200, 3-speed. And I learned very young, or very early, that with that 6-cylinder, you could take out a lot of transmissions. And I did. I took out 3 transmissions because you can't push a 6-cylinder to do things that you would want an 8-cylinder to do. And I can remember that the last time I lost a transmission, I lost that transmission in the middle of downtown Boston. Now, if you're not from New England, if you've never been to Boston, then you'll probably never understand the convoluted nature of all the streets in Boston. They literally built those streets around cow paths and wagon trails, and they're all over the place. There's nothing square or directional. It's just they're in all kinds of directions. Anyway, so I had gone to Boston because I wanted to go buy tickets for a play. And I got down there, I got my tickets, and I started heading out of town. And on my way out of town, I believe I was on Tremont Street, if I remember right, the transmission let go. And all I had was reverse and third gear. And that little 6-cylinder worked its butt off to get that car moving from every stop. And there was many stops because downtown Boston was just full of cross streets and street lights. And every time you wanted to start, you'd have to start in third gear and feather that clutch. And by the time I got home, and I did get home, that clutch was burning. It was not happy. Fortunately, once we got up on the interstate, we could just cruise along in third gear. There was no grinding, there was no noise, there was just third gear. And I can remember we had to go through a toll booth because back in the day, you didn't have the cameras. You had to literally stop and throw your coins in. There were no attendants. There were attendants, but most of these were just toss your coins in. and I don't remember if it was 50 cents or 25 cents, but going through the toll booths, and there were 2 of them, I had to throw my coins in. But I didn't want to slow down too slow or come to a stop, because I didn't want to have to stress that transmission or that clutch anymore, because I really wanted to get home. So I'd come up at some speed, say 10, 15, 20 miles an hour, and I literally would throw my coins at the coin collector, and hopefully that the coins would get in. But the funniest part about that is that while I'm doing that, and while I'm going through that thing at 15 or 20 miles an hour, it took a while for the coin to cycle down into the basket and get read by the coin collector or the machine. And by the time it finally read it, I was already past the little alarm, and I look back and the alarms are going off and it's ringing and making all kinds of noise, and then finally the coin registers in the coin collector and the alarms go off, and I had to do that twice. And it was an experience. That was the last transmission that I had to put in that car. Lots of adventures. If you're an automotive kind of guy, if you're a kind of guy that uses his car for everything, we live in a very rural area, so if we wanted to go anywhere or do anything, we quite literally had to go in a car, And that car became a significant part of my life. And my dad bought the car for me. He didn't buy the car for me, but he found the car for me. Now, my dad, he ran a retail gun store. And he knew a lot of folks. A lot of folks would come in. And he found this car. One of his customers had this car. He was trying to sell it, and he was telling my dad about it. And this car got traded in at a Dodge dealership. Now, again, this is a small town, small rural town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knew Avery Dodge, and that's where the car was. So we had to go down and negotiate with Avery Dodge to get this car. It was only 6 years old at the time, had pretty low mileage, but it was my first car. And we negotiate this thing, and I buy this car in 1971, I believe it was 71 or 72, for $750. And everything worked. The top would go up and down. It was electric top. The motor was fine. Everything ran fine. Of course, I wanted a V8, but I got a straight 6, which probably for somebody who was 18 years old, 17 years old, that wasn't a bad thing. So I got this car. I dated in this car. I went to school in this car. I went places with this car that a car shouldn't go. I got the car stuck. And it was my daily driver. As it aged, things would happen to it. The back window was plastic. Back in those early days, they didn't have the glass backs, or at least the Mustang didn't have the glass back. It had the plastic, and if you remember those plastics would turn really yellow, and after a while you couldn't see through them. And when it let go, it just let go. And at 18, 19 years old, you don't have a lot of money, or at least I didn't have a lot of money, to go and source a new top or a new window for the thing, so we taped it up. And this Mustang did not have the best heater. Then you take and you let that back window go. And the consequences are that in the wintertime, this car was really very, very cold. So I would go back and forth to college, and it was about an hour and 3/4 from home to the school. And I would have to wear my hunting clothes, so all my wool, my long johns, my boots. I'd have boots on, and those boots were all insulated, and I would have to literally drive back and forth in the wintertime to college, all decked out and dressed like that, because otherwise I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, you just freeze your butt off going back and forth. And that's what I did. That's what we did, because you didn't whine, you didn't complain, you just you did what had to be done. And I'm wondering if that's what all men or boys or young men used to do back in the day. Just do what you had to do. Get done what you had to get done and make the best out of everything that you could. So I did. And I used that car until I bought it in 71, 72, I don't remember exactly. And I drove that car until 74 and a half. And these old Mustangs, they were famous because the rear shackle actually connected to the rear trunk, or the trunk pan. And of course the gas tank was part of that trunk pan, but up on the side of that, the unibody, that's where the shackles would get mounted. And this is the Northeast, and in the Northeast, everything in the wintertime is salted. And that salt just raises havoc with sheet metal and cars. And Ford was not building cars that with materials that were designed to last generations. And you used it, I used it, and the roads were salty. And believe it or not, we could still do pretty well in the snow with that car. It never caused me any real issues. I could get almost anywhere I wanted to, but then I was 18, 19 years old, and 18 or 19-year-olds just somehow managed to get where they want to go. And but that salt over years really took its toll. The cars just didn't last. They just rotted. They rusted bad, and it didn't matter what the car was. And this one rusted. It was no exception. And what happened is those rear shackles actually rusted right up through the trunk. And I remember the day that it happened, the car suddenly settled, woof, down onto the rear pumpkin, onto the rear differential. And same thing, I was not home and I had to get home. So you put it in first gear, you let out the clutch, you accelerate, and the torque on the rear end would literally rotate the springs, the leaf springs, and the car would raise itself up. It would pivot. And then as soon as you accelerated and put the clutch in, that torque goes away and the car literally settled, bang, down back onto the pumpkin. Shift into second, same thing, let out the clutch, accelerate, the car would lift itself up. Put in the clutch, bang, go back down onto the pedestal, onto the pumpkin. Third gear, same thing, bang, would settle back down onto the pumpkin. But we got home. And I'm here to tell you, we got home a lot of times just that same way, because being young, being a young kid that just said he had to get things done, he had to go places, we kept going places, and we went places with that car for probably 3 or 4 months, when I think common sense probably took over, and I realized I couldn't keep doing that at some point something was going to break, I was going to get hurt, and worse, I might hurt somebody else. So I retired the car. And I had no car for a number of months. I would have to borrow my dad's pickup, his Ford truck, which I totally enjoyed. Dad wasn't always so happy about it. Dad could be a little possessive about his cars, which I guess is okay. And June or July of '75, I bought my first new car, and that was that '75 Pontiac. The Mustang, I ended up having to retire it. And back when I retired it, there were not automotive restoration parts dealers like there is today. You can buy tubs for these Jeeps. You can buy entire Mustang bodies today. That didn't exist back when I retired this car. And I didn't want to get rid of it because I loved the Mustang. I became a true Mustang enthusiast because of that car, and I didn't want to get rid of it. So I tried to save it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I tried to save it, and I put it out next to my dad's barn. That would end up destroying the car, and the car literally, because it sat on the ground, and the ground would suck up the moisture, and the car began to even rot in more and more places. But I still wanted to rebuild it. I still wanted to continue to own that car until one day, it was after I got married, it became obvious that was a dream, but it wasn't a dream based on any kind of reality. Again, because the stuff just wasn't there. It wasn't available. And I ended up selling it to a guy a couple towns over who made his living restoring cars. He was into a lot of European cars, restoring European cars, but he wanted that car, and I sold it for cheap money because I was more interested in just getting it out of the property. I don't want to lose my puzzle piece. So I sold it to him. And he came in with a trailer, and he hauled it up onto that trailer and took it away. Now, I knew where the place was. And for years and years and years after he bought the car, I would see that car parked in a series of cars in his restoration shop, waiting to be worked on. And I bet that car sat there for 15 years. And then one day, the business got sold, and that Mustang disappeared. And I did hammer on it too, guys. I mean, there's more stories. There are stories that involve police officers and other things. And even though I only drove it for 3 or 4 years, I got to see that car for another 20 years between having it sit in my dad's field or next to the barn and seeing it in the parking lot of this restoration shop. And then it just was gone. So that is my story, or my multiple stories, I guess. This car was styled, and it was styled to engender emotions for the people who bought it. And that car was one of the top selling cars for the first 3 years of its existence. So again, it evoked emotion. It said that this is what you're going to use, this is what you're going to buy, this is what you're going to get your life sort of wrapped into, because a car was a part of your life. It was a part of your lifestyle. It was a part of your being. It was how you were identified, or how you identified yourself. And I'm not sure what Jaguar is doing. I'm not sure what their intentions are. And like I said, one of the things that's interesting is that a friend of mine, Jeff, and I were talking about this here a week ago. One thing that definitely occurred is Jaguar got attention. People are paying attention. I don't know that it's the right attention, but people are paying attention. So Jaguar had literally was just sort of failing as a company because it couldn't build cars that would sell. Now, I'm still not sure with this new design that this car is going to sell, but you give the devil its due and see where it takes you. So guys, that's my car story. So if you enjoyed this kind of content, leave a comment. there's a lot of more stories there's a lot more stories with this little Mustang, or that involve the Mustang in one way or another, because you got to remember that a 18, 19, 20-year-old owned this, and 18, 19, 20-year-olds didn't always make the best decisions. So there's more stories on that Mustang. There's more stories on the Pontiac. There's more stories on a lot of cars that have come through my life. If you enjoyed this kind of content, if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment. If you have car stories, tell me your car stories. I think car stories makes the culture. It makes the reason for doing what we do, for owning these old Jeeps, for restoring these old Jeeps, for maintaining these old Jeeps. It is a little bit the nostalgia. It is a little bit the memories. It is a little bit what it does to your emotions and what it does to your soul. And I think, again, that was the point of all of this, is that it gets inside your emotions. It gets inside your soul. Guys, if you enjoyed this and if you'd like to see more of this, this is the first time I've done this, so I need to learn the technique of this kind of storytelling a little bit. But if you enjoyed this, please let me know. Leave a comment and tell me if you'd like to hear more of this, and we'll continue building a puzzle. Guys, I appreciate you being here. Love you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.